And now it's time for Guerilla Roundup. They'll let you know what happened overnight when things transpire you whilst you sleep. Right there in the loop you keep.
Welcome to the fourth and, as it turns out, final day of our summary of the New Zealand versus England test from Mount Maunganui. I'm joined today by the very venerable and indeed highly esteemed master of the Guerilla Cricket rotors, Tony Bishop. Thank you for being with us today, Tony.
A great pleasure as ever. Delighted to be sitting here at 3 a.m. with you, Messrs.
So this morning it was finally wrapped up about an hour and 3/4 into the day. Perhaps you could give us a very brief summary of what happened today before we talk about the whole test.
Well, yeah. What did New Zealand start on? They started on about 63 for 5, weren't they? If I remember rightly.
That's correct.
From there, Jimmy was on a hat trick. He didn't quite get it, but he got Southey was the second ball. Remind me who he got first up.
That's a really good question.
Wagner. Well, it wasn't Wagner because well, there was more. But having got to that point, it all
Cougarline, I think it was, wasn't it?
Cougarline, yeah. LBW. Southey tickled one, didn't he? From there, it really looked curtains. Jimmy, as I said, got himself onto a hat trick. Wagner came and went in fairly rapid order. But Daryl Mitchell, the fighter that he is, kept on going. He kept on going, 57 off 101. Blair Tickner danced, ducked, wore a couple.
And laughed.
As England tried different. and nearly, but in the end he was bowled by Anderson. Not surprisingly, Daryl Mitchell was the not-out batsman. Everyone seemed to be accepting the inevitable, but no Kiwi is going to lie down and just give up. So I think if you look at today's play, the inevitable happened in two ways. One, England were always going to wrap it up. And two, there'd be at least one Kiwi who says, well, I'm not going to give my wicket away. You're going to have to work for it. And kind of inevitably to me, that was Daryl Mitchell, who I might have mentioned a few times I'm a huge fan of.
Thank you for that.
Not just because of his Middlesex connections.
Thank you for that, Tony. So England won by 267 runs in the end. New Zealand were all out for 126. So just looking back over the match as a whole, what are your lasting impressions from that game and the players of the game?
Good question. I think what was the Johnny Nash song? More questions than answers. I'm actually think on this occasion, however, England answered a few. So my overarching impression of the game was it's another Bazball tick in the box.
Yep.
It's answered a few more things. So can it work in New Zealand? Pitches are obviously often quite placid. Big scores aren't that unusual. A lot of draws if you look over the history of not just England but other teams in New Zealand. But England have put themselves twice into a position in the game where they were bowling at the right time. So it proves to me that there's an adaptability and a flexibility in the approach, in the England approach, as much as it is huge fun. And an astuteness with Stokes as captain. I mean, you can have the heaviest artillery in the world. If you don't manage it right, it can be firing off in all the wrong directions. So I think that answered some of those questions. A day-night test is always something a bit different. And England have, of course, as you mentioned, have a shocking record in them. They were thumped in Edgbaston. Oh, they thumped West Indies in Edgbaston. They've lost the subsequent 5. All of them away, and yet they've won this one again through manoeuvring the game to be in the right place at the right time. They were put in, of course, that might have helped. I think Jimmy and Broady, one question I would have had, and I'm sure a lot of people said, just how long can they go on for? I've written in my notes ageless brackets for the time being, as we all are.
Yeah.
In my head, I'm still 25.
Well, I may chronologically be 72, but I regard myself as two 36-year-olds actually.
Well, yes, indeed. He has the body of a 36-year-old. Don't tell anyone. She's in the cellar. Yeah, but
This
they
wouldn't
were
have
both
been
magnificent.
this would not have been a Bishop podcast without some of those sorts of references, I gotta say.
They were magnificent. Jimmy was on a hat trick. Stuart Broad, rolled back the years or whatever. He did bowl really, really well. There is something when he gets on those rolls that is an inevitable. It's it just the momentum gathers, and you kind of sense they're coming. And so Jamie couldn't go on and do that, get the 5 for this morning. But then Jimmy stepped up to the plate and did his bit. They might be used more sparingly, but boy, was it vindicated here. Combination of experience and craftsmanship between the two of them was just too much for New Zealand.
It's worth noting that Jimmy bowled 10.3 overs and took 4 for 18.
Phenomenal.
Broad took 4 for 49, and that was really all last night, wasn't it?
It was. I mean, the other thing I think England would be hugely encouraged by was how much the runs were spread out around the team. Now, if you were looking perhaps more classically at Test match cricket, you go, well, no one went on and posted a big one. Graham Gooch, who got the big daddy 100, and nobody got 100. Nobody got any. Even Crawley, who is a wicket waiting to happen, but especially on a slightly greener seeming pitch, he still at a difficult time for England made 28 odd. He survived. He had his luck, but he made 28 odd. Duckett made runs in both innings. In the first innings, Pope, Brooke 80 odd, Folkes 50 odd, I think. In the second innings, if you look at that second innings when they were looking to get ahead of the game to give themselves scope to bowl New Zealand out with some margin to spare, Crawley, Duckett, Pope, Root finally, Brooke, Stokes, Folkes, and Robinson all made runs. They got to a very decent score on this wicket without anyone getting a big score.
Indeed.
And that speaks to me of a real sense of collective purpose as well as just individual purpose. And I think that's got to be a good thing.
Well, an interesting question was posed yesterday on air. Somebody said, I don't really recall Stokes doing a lot in terms of performance since becoming the captain of the team. And apart from the initial outing at Edgbaston, that sort of is true. But the point that I made is that previously when he got something, it was because it stood out largely because nobody else did anything. And now we're in an era where everybody's doing something, and he doesn't have to be the one standout apart from Joe Root, who's actually
31 off 33 is still not bad.
It's not bad at all.
And it was the right innings at the right time. Apparently, he only batted later in the order because he was, shall we say, indisposed. At the moment, he was supposed to have gone in.
Oh, well, he must have had some of that.
It wasn't even tactical.
He'd probably had some of the fish and tartar sauce ice cream.
Oh, Lord, that's enough to make anyone sick. I mean, Joe Root, you mentioned Joe Root, got some runs finally.
So
and it's quite funny how he gets out. What was it we were saying before you press the record button? He's the classical violinist who wants to play punk.
Yeah, well, is that a problem
with the kids? No, it's not a problem. Good luck.
You don't think
him.
so? Well,
no, I don't think it's a problem.
So here's my take on it.
It's a problem if England start losing.
Well, yeah, but also I think he's not actually realizing his potential because he's trying to play with the young kids, and he can do that. But it's not the basis upon which he's built big innings in the past. And there is going to be times when you need 150 from Root, and if he keeps playing the way he is, I suspect that's not going to happen nearly as often.
Yes, I do take your point of view on that. We are of a similar vintage for watching cricket, and therefore, I see that. I do think, though, if the occasion arises where he does need to do that, as opposed to chasing the game, they'll be rare for England. This England team would rather entertain and lose. A draw is almost anathema to them. They'd rather win 6, 7, 8, 10 test matches and lose the odd one than win 4 and draw 4. That's the mentality. But so, I mean, I think Root will adapt. I think he can still do those things. I think he accepts that it's not an individual game. Jeffrey Boycott possibly would have gone out and just played the Jeffrey Boycott way, regardless of what was going on around him. I think Joe Root is a very intelligent chap who's incredibly in tune with the sort of the spirit, ethos, and style of this team, and he's looking to adapt. And I think we would applaud him for that. If the occasion arises when he needs to do it differently, I'm pretty confident he will be able to.
Yeah, I agree. From my point of view, I mean, I think it was a fantastic all-round performance from England, as you say. A big question mark for me over Zach Crawley. But the person I actually want to highlight in all of this is Ben Foakes, because his wicket keeping has been really excellent, and his batting has been as good as basically any wicket keeper, any full-time wicket keeper that I can recall for England. He's batted beautifully. I mean, he's had misfortune in terms of first slipping in the Oval dressing room and that sort of stuff in the past. But I think it's fair to say that he's cemented his right to remain in the England team even when Johnny Bairstow comes back. Would that be fair?
Absolutely. Well, Stuart Broad, I think, in the spirit of the old stager, is bigging up his younger colleagues. He's the best wicketkeeper in the world. He's certainly a good. What is interesting is if you look down the scorecard, with Foakes coming in at a time when lower order runs were certainly needed to bolster the situation that they was in, his innings stands out as being slower than others.
Yeah.
And so he, apropos, kind of almost like the Root discussion. His first was 38 off 56.
Yes.
Most of the others he were a runnable, more than a runnable, or certainly a runnable there or thereabouts. In second innings, what did he get in the second
51
innings? 51 came off 80. Behind Joe Root's 57, Brooks 54, Stokes 31. So he, I think, and I don't know whether this is a conscious team decision or a Ben Foakes, just him being a quite thoughtful fellow. He seems to have set himself up as, I need to be a bit of a rock around which the others play and enjoy themselves. And he did it, remember, at Lords with Root to see them over the line against, it was New Zealand, wasn't it? Last year.
I think it was. Yeah.
I think he did it at Trent Bridge. He definitely did it at Trent Bridge. Bairstow was going berserk. I think if you look back, Foakes made runs. So I think he kind of has taken upon it himself to let the children play by making sure that there's, he's the padding on the playground. If they fall off the swings, they've got somewhere bouncy to land. That's a role he's happily taken on, and it seems to be working. And okay. I mean, his glove work is superb.
Yeah, I agree. We're running very short on time. A couple of things. Firstly, what does New Zealand take from this, and where do they go?
I think they take from this that they are in transition. I think Williamson would be worried. He didn't look anything like the Kane Williamson we know. I think he is due a rest, or even the Saudi taking the captaincy hasn't necessarily worked for them. It's a big. If you take Bolt, Henry, and Jameson out, it shows you that if you're, Tickner and Kugelheim with the best will in the world, aren't those three, and they don't have. It shows that they lack perhaps a bit of a depth of resource. But I think you can look at Blundell, Conway, and Mitchell, my hero, who all did really, really, really well. But there was the difference. Yes. New Zealand built their castle around one big innings in terms of Blundell, and England built it around lots of biggish
Yes.
innings.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think they have cause to be worried. But I think they'll be looking forward to having Matt Henry back. Henry in Saudi is a lot better proposition.
Well, I think they
than,
should offer Bolt
Tigner
whatever
too.
he wants to come back and play in the next test.
Well, somebody said, didn't they? There was somebody tweeted and said, it might have been Mog, back a lorry load of cash into his garden. He lives 20 minutes away from Mount Maunganui, as we've said a few times. But I think there's an element of pride involved in that. He's taken his decision. New Zealand cricket is taking that decision. Family time, franchise. It would be a sort of an over my dead body if we really, really have to. Someone's going to have to swallow some pride before they do get him back, even though a lot of people look and go, it is probably the right thing to do.
Yes, indeed. So before we wrap it up, Tony, is there anything else you want to comment on before we go? Because we're 15.5 minutes in already, believe it or not.
Wow. Well, far be it for me to go on too long. Yeah, probably no, not really. It's. I mean, I guess it's been brilliant fun commentating on England. I hope it continues to stay that way. It's always brilliant fun doing it with our group because everyone is just such fun to be with. Does it ultimately shorten Test cricket because you accelerate the game so much? Where are we? We haven't got to lunchtime on day 4. But then last year, Bazball, etc. 2 of the tests, at least 3 of the tests, I think, went to 5 days, didn't they? So
yes,
it's if it's a shot in the arm to Test cricket, hallelujah. I'm 110% behind it. Count me in.
Thank you very much for that, Tony. Now, the last few days, I've nominated the Guerilla of the day. What I'm going to do right now is nominate the Guerillas of the match. And for me, they are the Guerillas who have got up in the middle of the night, quite literally at midnight, to go into the studio to keep it running. And fundamentally, the Bear, the Bishop, and Jason Hiscox have done an amazing job with a nary a technical glitch the whole match. They're not even drunk when they get there, which is surprising.
Because one of us at least has to drive.
Yeah, that's true. But it's been smoother. So I just want to say thank you to you guys because you're fantastic. The other thing I want to do is our tweeters of the match is all the people who've tweeted in, because that engagement, for me particularly as a tweet reader, is what makes it super fun. I really enjoy the company on air, but I love having the participation of our tweeters. So
and YouTube too. It's interesting.
Yes,
it's interesting
yes.
how YouTube seems to be forming. It's like 2 gangs. It's like the Sharks and the Jets. Over on YouTube, you've got one gang, and then over on Twitter, you've got another gang, and occasionally one or two step over and cross over. But by and large, they're 2 separate gangs. I'm sure one day they're going to meet for a face-off in a pub car park.
I love that.
Probably in the Bishop and Bear.
Absolutely. We're better.
I'm sure we have a virtual car park to go with the virtual pub.
So I want to say thank you to everybody for watching this and giving us the feedback. We encourage you to subscribe to the Guerilla Cricket channel, to share this podcast. And if you'd like to support us, to go to patreon.com/Guerilla Cricket, and whatever you can afford will be very welcome. But we will be back with a daily summary from each day of the next test, which starts at 10 p.m. on Thursday UK time. So that's Friday morning for me. And for every day that goes on, we will have a daily roundup as well. And we hope you enjoyed it, and look forward to you being back with us then. Bye-bye.
And now it's time for Guerilla Roundup. They'll let you know